Welcome to day 148 on the trail. We have four readings for today. From 1 John chapter 5 verses 1 through 21, Deuteronomy 27 verses 1 through 26, Psalms 137 and 138, and 1 Maccabees 13 verses 1 through 24. Today, I would like to focus on Psalm 137, which is one of the hardest and most emotional of the Psalms. Today, we do not see many praise choruses or hymns written based on Psalm 137. It is not a song of encouragement or triumph, of victory or confidence. This is a psalm of sorrow and lament. And in many ways, our modern culture has either forgotten how to lament or decided to ignore it. We prefer happier messages and choose to ignore or rush past times of suffering and grief. However, there is meaning in our grief and purpose when we take time to lament. Therefore, I do not think it is surprising that over half of the book of Psalms contains psalms of lament. Yet Psalm 137 is particularly heavy, written in a period of immense sorrow and pain for the Jewish people. It is raw, and emotions are exposed. This psalm was most likely written soon after the fall of Jerusalem in 586 BC. The Jewish people had watched as the great temple in Jerusalem was desecrated and then destroyed. Thousands had died by starvation during the siege of Jerusalem, and others killed by the Babylonian army. Families were separated and taken into captivity. These were horrific events that could not be passed by, forgotten, or ignored. Psalm 137 is about remembering that pain and sorrow experienced by God's people. This psalm is written in three sections, with three perspectives surrounding their shared experience during the fall of the Jewish nation. The translation I'm using today is my own, as I wanted to focus on hearing their words. Beginning in verse 1. Beside the rivers of Babylon, there we sat, and oh, we wept, when we remembered Zion. On the poplars there, we hung our lyres. For there our captors asked us for words of song, and our tormentors for rejoicing. Sing to us one of your songs of Zion. How can we sing a song of the Lord on foreign soil? We remembered. This is a communal lament. Not only were they living in captivity in a foreign land, the land of their conquerors, but now they were being mocked. Tell us how great your city is. Tell us how great your God is. They had lost their place in the world. In fact, the word there is used repeatedly, as if to say, we are no longer here, where we long to be, where our homes once stood, where we raised our children and fed them with the fruits of our crops. They were now there in Babylon. Their people, their traditions, and their connections to their shared history were all lost. In the second section, what was communal turns personal. We becomes I. Beginning in verse 6. If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand forget. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth if I do not remember you, if I do not lift Jerusalem above my highest joy. I will not forget. Why? Why not forget and move on? Why not leave the past to the sands of history and move forward? There is a sense of clinging to control here. Even in the midst of captivity in a foreign land, even in the midst of loss, we can choose to remember. In lamenting the actions of the present, we also choose not to forget our place and our identity that has formed it. We will choose to sing again, and we will choose the song that we will sing. Now we come to the final part of the psalm, and probably the most difficult, beginning in verse 7. Remember, O Lord, against the sons of Edom, the day of Jerusalem, those who said, strip her to her very foundation. Daughter of Babylon, the devastator, blessed is the one who pays you back in kind for what you have inflicted on us. Blessed is the one who seizes and shatters your children against the rock. In this final section, the psalmist calls God to remember as well, to remember the humiliation done to Jerusalem and to God's people, but to not just remember, but to act, to repay the Edomites and the Babylonians for what they have done to them. But how do we read the final line of the psalm? Blessed is the one who hurls children against rocks? Should there not be a final line to this psalm? Something that says, but yet I will trust you, O God, or yet our hope is in the Lord. But it's not here. The psalm just ends on this horrific image. Words of revenge and intense rage. May what was done to them be visited on their enemies. We may understand their anger and their honest lament. We may even identify with these thoughts and raw emotions at times. However, there is an important message that we can glean from this psalm. Who is the Blessed One who carries out vengeance on their enemies and those who have wronged them? It is not the author or the people now living in captivity. The psalmist does not say, bless us as we kill their children. Instead, they are crying out to God in the midst of their pain. Despite their suffering and life in captivity, they still know that God is with them. No matter where there is, God is still there with them, even as they mourn by the poplars in a foreign country. God is there, beside the hospital bed, or when we are struggling at work. God is there, listening. God is willing to hear our most honest, painful, and heartfelt pleas. We can be honest with God, and God wants us to be honest with Him. We do not need to pull our punches or mask our cries with acceptable language. God knows us and still chooses to be with us. There was another tree. It was not placed in a foreign land, but just outside of Jerusalem. It was not a lyre that hung on that tree, but the Son of God. From that tree, in the midst of unimaginable pain and suffering, Jesus cried, my God, why have you forsaken me? Where are you, Father? But it was also the same voice that cried from the same tree, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. Even when the world faced its darkest moment, Jesus knew his Father was still listening, that God was still there. Jesus wanted us to know that. God wants us to know that. To always remember and never forget that He is there. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay on the trail.